Yeah, baby. Yeah. The Mac is back. Back with another video. Hello, the initiated. My name is Marcus Junikala, and today we're checking out Groth by Wavelet Audio. First of all, I love saying Groth. It feels good in my mouth. That's don't take that out of context. So we checked out Secunda by Wavelet Audio a few videos back, and as I said in that video, I knew Wavelet Audio from this library, from Groth, which I love saying. So after that video, I asked them whether they would be interested in me checking out Groth, and they said yes. So here we are. Might as well touch on transparency at this point. So yes, Wavelet Audio did send me this copy. So first of all, thank you to them for doing so. That being said, all opinions are my own, both in good and bad. I haven't been asked to say anything one way or the other, nor would I ever do that. Now, what is Groth? It is, they call this a modern cinematic instrument inspired by the Dark Ages and mythology. I get the impression from what I've read from this and what I know that it is kind of combining a bunch of different things under one sort of umbrella of feeling and vibe. It's not like locked in into any, you know, specific era. I know they say Dark Ages and mythology, but it seems like there is a fair bit of a scope here. They say evokes the atmosphere of mystical ancient northern gods, ancient cultural traditions, burial mounds, and rugged frosty forests. So you get an idea of the vibe that they want to go for with this one. They call it a toolkit, drawing from rich and diverse folk music traditions, rooted in the depths of the past. Provides everything you need to create contemporary cinematic music inspired by the Dark Ages and mythology, Viking style, folk music, any kind of epic or dark post-horror music. Add depth and vast unique atmosphere to productions. This NKS library is not limited to ancient pagan folk music. It's at the crossroads of cinematic, modern, folk, and post-horror. Cool. So I mentioned I knew this library, so obviously never owned it before, otherwise I wouldn't have asked for a license. I knew of this. I've been close to buying this, actually I think a couple times before, because it seems really cool. I love this kind of stuff, and they've had some good sales. So I was very close before, but as I've said before as well, I try not to buy stuff that I'm not using right now, and you know, that's a, you know, makes it a very limited set of things that I absolutely need right now. So being close, but yeah, I mean, why I'm describing this or telling you this is that I don't actually remember a ton about how it sounds. I've only heard like snippets and demos here and there, and I thought, okay, that's cool. So this is, in that sense, a very blind demo, certainly because this is the first time I lay my hands on it. And yeah, my memory of this is that some of it was really cool, some of it probably wasn't exactly for me, you know, and that's the case with pretty much any library out there in the world. You take the stuff you like and you do something with it, and you don't do stuff with the stuff that doesn't speak to you. But yeah, I mean, this is made for contact player. Requirements: contact 6.2.2 and above, 10.6 gigs of hard drive space, 15.6 of original sample material, and it is compatible with hardware by Native Instruments. 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, pretty standard stuff. And they do mention true legato here again, which when we looked at Secunda, I don't, you know, sounds like I'm saying Pumbaa from The Lion King. Yeah, they mentioned true legato in there, and there was the one patch that I played with that seemed like it was utilizing a legato thing, but then I discovered it was actually maybe primarily designed for some other stuff, because I realized how it was actually working. So interested in seeing how that comes to life here. There is a lot of, in terms of instruments, what's in here. Well, actually, let's close the website here. I'm going to take us to Groth itself, and we're going to open the side panel here. This is what opens up when you open up the menu for Groth. So 7 folders, which are playable instruments, percussion, sound effects. Oh, sorry, sounds and effects. That's interesting. I wonder what sounds are. I thought if the rest of them don't have sounds, that's kind of a letdown. Loops and pulses, voices, organic synths, and drones. So the first one being called playable instruments makes me think that the rest aren't playable. That's obviously a joke, but a very poor one. But it is interesting. I'm sure there's the logic behind it, but interesting way of putting it. But that's where we're going to start. So what I have opened up here is the playable instruments folder, and in the playable instruments we have Tagelharpa, then we have acoustic guitar, solo cello, orchestra cellos, orchestra violins, Dombra, which probably means velocity, and then Dombra designer. So starting with Tagelharpa, interface, again, I want to praise the look of these instruments. I really love the visual design here, and that they have these animations in here in the interface. I love this kind of stuff. Again, a lot of people are going to say doesn't matter, doesn't affect the sound, and indeed it does not. But what it might affect is your inspiration. It might affect your state of being and how well you spend your time with this instrument. And if it feels good, gives you a good vibe, a good place to work, then I think it matters. And giving it the right energy, for the lack of a better word, is a desirable thing. And if you're going to be looking at these for hours, yeah, I certainly appreciate them looking good. But yeah, interface super clean here, super minimal. We got controls for reverb, and in that we have none, hall, and room. What's wrong with my speaking today? Then we have a rebo control box here, which controls duration and offset. Cool. So this kind of reminds me of, they do like to give you control for the offset stuff, which I think is fantastic, because sometimes you do want to put your hands on there. Then you have tuning. So you have 5 options built around C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and C. Okay, yeah, they combine different tunings here, but fair enough. 5 different ones should give you a bit of scope, and then you can obviously tune in contact or otherwise, or with Melodyne or whatever if you turn it into audio. But also what's important to remember is that obviously this is an instrument with a lot of limitations in itself, and to take a realistic sound of it, give a realistic sounding take on it, you want to be in the original tunings. But in terms of what you'll be hearing today, only Groth in action. No added effects, no reverb, nothing. Just the library, and then I have a limiter on my master bus, which I control to make the level decent for this video, for your listening experience. That being said, the limiter is set to be as transparent as possible, and If you hear any clipping, it's probably the limiter. If it's not the limiter, I'll let you know, and I'll probably let you know either way. But we will probably have to adjust that as we move through this video to get the best settings for everything. In the keyboard zone here, we have, let me get this zone right. Yeah, so we have, ooh, okay, this reddish orange zone, I don't know what that color is, gives you control over the rebowing. So eighth, quarter note, then, okay, whole note. Okay, so 4 different options there. Interesting. And then you have 2 zones, which I presume would kind of model what the hands would do. But let's just start playing around with this. We're going to have to get a decent level going first. So bear with me as I set that while we play this. Okay, so it allows you to play one at a time. I'm not horribly familiar. I mean, I'm very familiar with the sound of this instrument, but how it's actually played and works, not very up to date on that information, to put it lightly. But let's change the duration here. So this makes complete sense to me. I don't know what kind of tuning pattern this is following. I mean, I can hear it, but in terms of the logic there. In terms of the sound of it, sounds good. Sounds pretty realistic. You can obviously hear the looping quite clearly. It's not like super synthetic sounding or anything. Especially on the longer notes, it's far more forgiving. I turned off the reverb entirely here, just to listen to the natural sound of it. Yeah, definitely there on the 8th note. I hear like the realism in the looping doesn't sound as tactile, as realistic as in the other ones. These other ones are perfectly fine. This one is a bit. You can hear the doesn't sound. Yeah, I mean the realism. It sounds. How should I put this? Let me play with this. Like there, on certain notes it's better than on other ones. Like on this one, it sounds far more realistic because it almost sounds like you're getting a bit of continuation from the previous bow into the next one. Like there's a bit of a overlap, like continuation, but on some of the other ones, it doesn't happen. Like on this one, you get it sounds like some of those particles are getting into the new note. And also on this one. But here we get a bit of that dip, so it sounds a bit jankier. But yeah, all the other ones sound perfectly great to me. Really liking the ambience of the recordings here. So that's always a huge thing in my books. Good ambience, good sense of presence. So I can go as, you know, dry and present as I want, and then I can add reverb on my own if I want. Cool. We're not going to look into the other tunings because this seems to be a rather sizable library and we want to get it done today. So we're going to move on. But to summarize this, it sounds good. The sampling itself, the playing, recording, all is great. All of, you know, like I said, on the 8th note, it's like you can hear that looping being present in a way that doesn't quite carry over to all of the notes. But certainly very, like, that's not going to be a problem in. First of all, there are certain things you can do in the mixing. You can play with volume automation. You can play with things, and in a musical context, once you actually start to combine it into some kind of phrase, I'm sure that will be perfectly fine for you know, most situations. And also, you know, the reverb does help quite a bit. But obviously, it would be nice to have all of them sort of glued together as nicely as some of the. I think 3 of the notes there were perfect. So would be nice to see the consistency there on the other notes as well. Acoustic guitar. Okay, so this is interesting. I don't know why, but it seems like it's pretty hard to sample guitars in a. Well, let me correct that. Sampling doesn't seem to be the issue because a lot of companies sample guitars really well, but the problem is when it's brought into contact, the scripting, how it's actually behaving and how it plays is difficult. I've said this many times that still to date, the best samplers, the company doing, you know, sampled guitars is Orange Tree samples from everything that I've heard. They're just super playable. And again, it's the magic they do in terms of within Contact, how it's programmed and you know, scripted, etc. Is the best I've heard so far to date. So interested in hearing what this sounds like. In terms of the color spectrum here, you have a lot of stuff happening. There's the blue zone, which I presume is the playable zone. Ooh, and then we have nicely, when you hover on the keys, they're actually marked. So full up, down, down only, that's the picking direction. Infinity mode. Thanos has entered the chat. Sustain, articulation, palm mute articulation, harmonics articulation, kick, snare. Okay, so we got some percussive action there as well. And then we have scrape and strum. That's good. Okay, interested in seeing how much of the playability is embedded in the actual playable zone and how much you have to do key switching here, because I'd rather have it interpret my playing in a realistic fashion rather than manually telling when to strum up or down or other stuff. But let's play. So first of all, the tuning is a bit not super sharp. You can hear that there's a bit of like pitchiness to that. So I'm not sure why it's also killing some of the notes that, like, I'm playing the sustain pedal, so I would expect it to ring out. but have to actually manually hold them. Okay, so if I let the note ring out completely, and then I lift the key, there's still the release sound of the finger releasing on the string. I would cut that out for those long notes, because you'd expect them to just... That's not a sound you would hear a good guitar player play if they've, you know, wrung out the string entirely. They wouldn't release in a way that makes it audible. But when you're playing phrases, then it's perfectly fine and actually very desirable. Yeah, so what I'm kind of missing is that the sustain pedal would allow me to let it sustain the notes that I want to sustain instead of having to hold them down, because that makes it more difficult to play. And if you're like a crappy player like myself, then that's a very desirable feature. Unless there is something here that allows me to do that, but there... Okay, so releases do have a scrape volume, but that's not really... Yeah, that doesn't... It helps because you can automate that, or, you know, make it dip on the long notes, but again, it's an extra option or extra step to do. Okay, so that was sustain articulation. Palm mute. Let me up the gain a bit for this one. There is somebody outside with a chainsaw. That sounds weird out of context. I'm in the middle of the woods, and some people here during the weekends do cut wood. So there is some dude presumably there doing that, which is rather not pleasant sounding. But I don't think you can hear that, but I can. Yeah, this is my experience that if the stuff on the sustain front isn't as perfect as I would desire it to be, the palm mutes are usually perfectly fine, and this sounds great to me. Very, very nice. So it clearly is not as difficult to do on the contact front. Something like that. Really liking this. Sounds super juicy, and yeah, it has a nice sort of thickness and kind of a gooey pop to it. That's really nice. 2 mic positions, so let's try the mic one. Sorry for my poor harmonization. Cool. There is quite a bit of reverb here. So there's a control for stereo, which is channel delay, which I don't think is what I'm looking for. I don't see a way to adjust the reverb. Yeah, that sounds liney to me. I am a bit confused about the reverb. There doesn't seem to be a control for that. We have amp options, that's not the same thing. So that is a bummer. Let's try infinity mode. Let's go back to sustains. So yeah, that infinity mode keeps the sustains going. So that's a cool option. That would be nice to set if you have a very sparse arrangement where you want it to kind of ring out. Also regarding the tuning, seems like it's mostly the wonkiness down here. And again, it's in pitch, and this, I don't know if this is to give it a certain flavor, because this is kind of meant to be like a vibey thing. Maybe it is, but you know, obviously hard to say without getting the dev's statement on that. But yeah, I would still, there are ways to give it vibe without, I mean, that's clearly in pitch, but, and some of these notes are, like this is probably is probably, that's maybe pushing it a bit. It does have, like, in a certain context, that vibe would be perfect, so don't get me wrong on that front. But yeah, getting the sustain to work with the sustain pedal to control the sustains would be super cool, because then this would be really, really, you know, perfect in many cases for that. And the reverb control. It doesn't seem to be here. I apologize if it is and I'm just absolutely blind, but I can't locate it. Oh, okay. It has a bigger interface. This is probably... I can't think of a situation. Let me readjust this. Let me go into our video capture. And let's move this over here somewhere. Cool. This is one of the rare occasions where the size changes depending on the patch. Usually they fit it in the same space that it occupies. So yeah, and this makes a lot of sense. So let's pull down the reverb here. Let's go into harmonics. So this is probably the weakest out of the three. Palm mute strongest. Sustains are really good, but again, the lack of control on the what sustains and when is an issue for me. But yeah, that's what was I going to say? Yeah, the harmonics sound a bit sort of kind of lo-fi sampling things. You know, it doesn't have the kind of liveliness that harmonics usually do. It sounds kind of choked and kind of reminds me of some of the older sampling things. But yeah, the point I want to make about this is that this seems to be perfect in a support role with other instruments in context. You can make perfectly realistic sounding guitars with this, with a bit of strategy, with a bit of, you know, programming and mixing work. But I wouldn't put this at the forefront of the guitar part, unless it was super like sparse, then it would be fine. But again, the core sound of this is very nice, very beautiful, well sampled. That's not the issue. It's really the scripting front here. Like, I love that rawness here in the low end. That breaking up. I would love to see a bit more velocity here, like playing super quiet. It responds like it goes kind of almost there, but I want it to go like into the very like sparse and gentle quiet stuff. That's like, this has a minimum, like the last maybe the 20%, 15-20% is missing there to what I would love to go. I love, you know, very quiet, gentle, delicate, textural sounds, so I think that would be super cool. But yeah, the core sampling work here is very solid. Moving on to solo cello. All right, so this is again a bit different sized, so let's go ahead and get this set up for you in the best possible fashion. Very interested in how this is going to sound like. To my understanding, I don't actually know their lineup completely, but yeah, obviously I've played a lot with. Let's actually. Okay, yeah, I was just scared that there was more interface to the right, because it looks like we're just seeing the half of it. Obviously, I've played a lot with string sample libraries, so probably that's one of the things I'm probably the best well versed in terms of what's out there and how it works and what it sounds like. So yeah, scared how this is gonna pan out, but you know, kudos to them for dwelling into this, regardless of what the outcome is, because it's not an easy game to get into. Different articulations: scary string, spiccato, sul ponte, spiccato, flottando, critic card, ka-ching, open strings, bends. Let's go, scary strings. Interesting. A lot of noise on that last one, which again could be like a positive thing, like noise again in strings especially. That sounds like a lot of noise though. Not on these other ones. Perfectly fine. But probably that low note was sampled pretty quiet, so yeah. And there's also the panning thing, so hard to say if some effects are kind of bringing that up. First things first, I love the actual sound of it. The texture of it is very nice. I love that it's a performance-based thing, clearly. So you get that. But as I play different notes, don't expect to be getting the same sound. It sounds like like some notes are just played completely differently. And also they have like a different core sound as well. So this doesn't sort of have the like a unified sound for every note. Let's play a bit higher here. And let's play more than one note. It definitely has more than one center pitch, so that's going to be tough to fit in there if you're doing something harmony-wise. Okay, so a lot of things happening there. You can clearly hear that because it's not, the sound isn't consistent for every note. They're not done exactly in the same style, or they don't like, the sound doesn't light up in the same way. So if you expect it to be consistent like that, that's not going to happen on certain notes. Many of these do blend, you know, in a uniform way with one another, but some don't. Love the sound of it. The way this is built, obviously they're kind of slow starters, so that it's easier for this library to sound more realistic. And obviously it kind of wants you to play slower stuff, otherwise it just doesn't come alive. Or if you play faster, it really depends on the notes that you're working with. In terms of the realism and how it's sampled, that's done pretty well. Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. It doesn't sound like to me it's using any like super complex, you know, programming or scripting in terms of how it's playing things. But it's smartly sampled, well sampled. Love the textures here. I think the lack of the consistency of the sound is going to be a problem in certain places, because you might hear like inspiration, and I love this, what the low end seems to be a bit more consistent there in terms of the sound. I love the sound of it. If you're chasing like an idea but then you go to a note and it doesn't do the same thing, that can be a letdown. On the other hand, this can be super inspiring in the sense that it's not predictable and consistent, and that has certain perks in certain situations. So I love the texture. I love the sound of it. Very, very cool. In terms of calling it scary strings, I get it, but this would also be pretty cool for like darker folk stuff. Definitely has that scary tint. I get it, but don't let the name kind of limit that for you. For tone, they have different types. So this was an approach that is in Secunda as well. They're probably brighter, darker. Can't look at everything here. Release, short. Okay, cool. So this is very nice. This is super, super nice. Let's actually test that. That's a extremely smart thing to include. Yeah, that helps a lot with the realism as we move from notes, depending on the style of your composition, gives you tremendous control. Spiccato. So the velocity sounds like the dynamics seem to me to be more sort of volume based. There's not a ton of textural change there. The top end struggles to kind of sounds a bit choked. So a bit more sort of liveliness, bounciness would be nice. It's a lot better here in the low end. So we do have controls for attack. Let's do short. So to me, yeah, we tested all of the attack types, short, medium, long. The medium actually tends to play, even for short notes, a lot better. Has kind of like a nicer pull and kind of a sense of movement to it. Releases seem to be... Okay, so we've got short and infinity. That's a pretty extreme end of a selection. Because I would use infinity because it just sounds like, for most contexts, a lot better there, like a nice natural sustain. This low octave, maybe octave and a half, sounds the best out of this. Like, again, the sound gets sort of a bit choked the higher up you go, and I would certainly... Yeah, I would probably go for something else for the top end. This is kind of the sound of it is, if you're chasing the realism, it's pushing you into a certain direction. You can only really, I would play only certain types of things. with this, and I would probably stay in the lower range of this. But it depends on what you're musically doing. I'm sure some other sort of ideas would lend themselves better to this, but yeah, I mean, it has its place and time for sure with this one. Sul pawn spiccato. Again, let's go to the releases, put to infinity. I think really the lack of the velocity responsiveness, not great. I would love it to react to my quieter playing in a quieter way, but also to hear a different texture and not just volume. First of all, the doesn't seem to go quiet enough when I'm playing quieter, and then having a different texture change would be make it more realistic. Okay, so the short here is definitely far more snappier. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, a lot of Sul pawns, to my taste, with a lot of libraries struggle with that. But, you know, it sounds a bit, you know, choked and thin to my taste. But in the context of what this is doing, like if you were doing darker, you know, simple folkish string stuff, I can see definitely how this would be very, very usable in that context. Again, there, it's hard to make phrases because the going really quiet demands that I play super quiet, and this is a very dynamic keyboard. I would need to be ridiculously quiet to get those quiet notes. It's really hard to even play that. But obviously you can adjust that, so that helps a bit. Flottando. I really like that texture there. It's sort of, also the pitchiness there is perfectly like struggling to be there, but it sounds like kind of creepy, kind of lo-fi, but it's a very nice tone there. Again, here it's super, like that's the quietest note I can possibly play. And that's by no means quiet. So it kind of struggles that this, especially to me, is an articulation that I would use in a sensitive, quiet, textural way. So the fact that I can't dig into that is kind of a problem, especially for this top end. But the low end, that's less of an issue, but I would still love to have that kind of that kind of scope. Reverb is going to glue this very nicely together. Let me do a long release here. I mean, especially for the kind of more drony or short moving stuff, that's going to be great. For this, because I feel like it doesn't express texturally or in the velocity department, the playing, an actual change in dynamic and volume in the playing, I would have to automate a lot of this to kind of create that sense of the player controlling it. It doesn't want to get quieter than that. But I love the sound, the textural sound of it. The low range works, ties in a lot better. And then I would probably separately track this higher end and then do my volume automation on that to kind of fit it together. But yeah, I kind of really want it to go more quieter and sensitive, but it just doesn't want to do that. So that's what I would do with that. Credit card. It's an interesting sound. At first, obviously very snappy. I would maybe in most cases cut a bit of that transient energy out because it does get kind of snappy. I almost view this as something I would use for, like if I were to marry chiptune with organic, like folkish instruments, and this would be something in between. Yeah, the clickiness gets definitely worse here in the low end. This is fine. Yeah, it gets snappier down there. Interesting addition, for sure. When you set it to long for both of the attack and release, this reminds me of an instrument. Reminds me of something, but I can't remember what it is. Some kind of a fringe keyboard instrument or something. Kind of in my eyes, a good bonus edition. I don't know, in the context of going for dark folk stuff. Don't know. I mean, you could double with that. You could put that as kind of a doubling tool for snappier, transients for some stuff. And again, like, just because this is labeled to be like a dark folk thing, doesn't mean it can only be that. Like, don't be limited by the label. Open strings. Yeah, again, beautiful textures. I love everything texturally here. Just feel like I can't pull with velocity control, like a quieter volume, and not just the volume, but like pull down in the texture engagement, how intensive it is. So I think that would just tremendously, you know, expand this, because I'm kind of wanting it to be more sensitive. Like, let's get quieter, let's get darker. It doesn't, you know, doesn't want to go there. Bends. Seems like a situational thing that I would add in context. All right, moving on to orchestra cellos. So playing with that mod wheel. So I want it again. I want it to get quieter. It has a beautiful sound that kind of calls me to get delicate with it, but it doesn't. It's still like pretty at the low end of the medium intensity. Has an interesting, like, as you begin to push a bit of limiter clipping there at the end, as you begin to push to the top end, it begins to take on this sound of like a full orchestra, like playing together, which is interesting. This has a very interesting texture and sound. I really like it. Again, I love this quieter sound. I wish I could just get like a third more. Let's pull back a bit more, get like super sensitive with this, because the texture is beautiful, kind of has this clearly very specifically produced sound to that. Hard to put my finger on it, which is a very good thing to say. Like, that's praise in my books. Yeah, beautifully done, the sound. I would just wish, let's go a bit quieter, a bit more sensitive. That would be perfect. Let's do sul ponticello, tremolo. Again, kind of the same thing with that sound. It's kind of asking me, kind of begging me to go quiet and sensitive, but it's already quite intensive. So just pulling down volume on that isn't going to quite give it the texture that I would personally write for. But again, a lot of this is quite subjective, so. Again, there sounds like woodwinds, and maybe even like some brass top end is coming in there to create that texture. Like I suspected orchestra cellos means that it's like an orchestral size section of cellos and not the sound of your orchestra. I still think that's probably what it means, but the sound of this seems far richer than just cellos. Like, has a very clear woodwind texture there. So interesting. Let's plow on to orchestral violins. We got to pick up the tempo here because there's so much more to go through. These actually play quite beautifully. I'm actually very impressed by this. Let's put the releases to long. This gets more sensitive. It's way more responsive to my playing. The transitions feel a lot more realistic. It could be just due to the articulation here, but this sounds really good. Slightly concerned about us being at the very low end of the articulation here. Like, I would be fine taking the upper third away from here in terms of intensity, because it just tends to add volume and kind of I feel like I just get more resonance build up there rather than anything of meaning. And I would take that third and put it to the bottom and make this thing quieter. Yeah, beautiful sound, beautiful texture. That's wonderful. This is amazing. This is really good. I just wish we could even go quieter, pull back into those textures and that sensitivity. But this is the quietest we can go in terms of the velocity range here. You can kind of, make that, create an impression of that with volume alone, but sul ponticello tremolo. Don't tend to use that articulation a lot, but cool to have it there, kind of in the same ballpark as the sustain. Yeah, beautiful sound, beautiful texture. Again, quieter would be better. Dombra. Let's actually... let's play a bit of this. Okay, so velocity controls the sample loop that's there. start like a folk punk band. Cool. Liking the concept. I don't tend to work from a velocity base thing for this, but I get it for the loops. I would control it otherwise, because it's just not how I think with my teeny tiny smushy soft computer, but I get it. I get the logic there. In terms of the sound, this is a bit too aggressive right out of the gate for my taste. So I would try and take some of the edge off there. Yeah. Definitely on the aggressive edge there. It doesn't seem like I can, attack and release obviously affect it a bit, but it affects the general attack and release and not really the texture of those plucks. Cool. Let's go into the Dombra designer here. I don't actually quite understand what's here to be designed. Maybe I'm missing something here. Yeah, I'm totally missing something here, but I don't know what it is. But yeah, I mean, I would probably use that more in a sort of a supportive comping, plugging along type of thing on the side. Percussion. We got ensembles, we got singles. We got single sweetener percussion, wood percussion. Let's do ensembles quick. Again, we have a bigger page here, so let's try and get everybody on board. I'm gonna fit this one to screen. Oh, let's not crash the software, hopefully. And let's play a bit. Seems like I really struggle to get access to those quieter velocities. I have to play super quiet, and then it doesn't feel like there's a lot in between. And we have velocity at max, which means this should be as responsive as it can get. Yep. So, all right. So one of the things I'm immediately wanting is like either to have the same sample for two keys adjacent, or like sometimes libraries have like a doubling key. So if I pressed this A here, if I pressed the doubling key, let's say over there, it would double the note that I just played. So I could play stuff really fast. But that can be tough on a single key, because if I'm playing with something like the Dombra here, the return is pretty slow. So I can't physically make the key return fast enough to play really, really fast stuff. Yeah, it's really tough. This also, from a review perspective, makes it hard to assess how playable and realistic the dynamics are when you start playing with it. Seems like it's sort of not responding fast enough to my playing. It could be like a perception of how the audio hits. So first of all, the sound of it is super solid. Well sampled, well mixed. Nothing on that front is an issue. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of like velocity there. Again, there's clearly a velocity curve there, but what I'm always looking for is as we go down in the velocity, not just a volume change, but an actual textural change. Like when a player would play it quieter, it gives a different texture. So I don't really, first of all, it's very near impossible, well, very difficult to get into those very quiet velocities. And the next jump seems super big. So, but it handles, again, hard for the key to return fast enough for me to get to that note, to the next note. But it seems to still handle, like, sounds realistic and reasonable when you play faster stuff. It's not, doesn't have a super wide spectrum in terms of the dynamics that it's expressing, but it sounds good. I would probably lean towards using this for, like, harder hitting, darker, folk, dark cinematic parts, or something like that. But cool. They have this flam control here. Which is interesting. First of all, the flams sound good, so that's really solid. When and where to, I prefer to usually play my flams myself as a drummer, just nicer. But I realize not everybody does that, so that's a good control to have. Flams sound great, and then you can just strategically insert them where you want them. Cool. Microphone positions. Yeah, so they have this presence control, which, libraries like, I think Fracture Sounds uses this as well, and many others. I like this. It's a really fast way of controlling your microphone position, so let's play with that a bit. Sometimes the response seems a bit, it's like sometimes it doesn't quite catch what I'm after. Let me actually, I want to check my buffer. So it's 256. So that should not be an issue there. Yeah, there's definitely, it lags on some notes, most definitely. It's like occasional sort of like it's struggling to follow. Don't know what that is. Single percussion. pull back with percussive stuff. Obviously, getting the limiter settings is going to be a tough balance. There's definitely not much coloring, at least, but yeah, here it seems like we have the same or similar. It's not the same. Similar types of hit next to one another, so it makes playing a bit easier. Definitely a different sound, but it sounds like it's coming from the same thing. At least for the lower area, apparently. Yeah, there I'm playing pretty, like, relatively quiet, and I would expect it to go, like, sensitive, quieter playing, but... yeah. Doesn't seem like that... like, we have this super quiet velocity here. But that sounds more like volume-based. So it doesn't want to go super quiet and sensitive. That definitely pushes the limiter a bit more than I'd love. Interesting sound, though. It's very nice, like, sub-puffiness. That's a really well done thing. Yeah, I mean, I would love it for it to go quieter, sensitive. Really, like, the sounds in here are fantastic, well sampled, well mixed. That's great. I just want to go quieter to get to those more sensitive, richer textures. And if you wanted to have like a faster dynamic played there, then that would be possible. Okay, so yeah, in the sub menu we have even more choices, but these seem to be mixed things here. Let's move. Okay, well, actually, we're gonna have to make some executive decisions here. I'm gonna move on to the wood percussion, or am I? Let's look at the Sweetener. Seems like some kind of leathery, I don't know what they call it, sweetener. Maybe it's, you know, to just add in there to get certain textures for your percussive sounds. Again, beautiful sound, beautifully captured, beautifully mixed. Yeah, beautiful imaging. That's really great sound. Here, the sounds don't evoke such a big desire, but it's to be quieter, but it's, you know, the wooden stuff tends to be kind of that way anyway. So again, would love to have that expanded scope there. Sounds good. Sounds and effects. I'm gonna make an executive decision here to go into the voices now. And we're gonna loop back faster to quicker to do kind of a quick overview of the sounds and effects and loops and pulses. But yeah, I want to do, let's go into voices next. We have 6 different things here. So let's resize this window and center it here. And we're gonna have to make it a bit smaller. That's what she said. And play this one. Very interested in hearing what these sound like because Secunda had, you know, tremendous vocal work there. So let's have a look. Okay, so this is Luiza Legato. I don't know why I said it like that, but. Okay, so sounds pretty solid. Let's pull back the limiter here. Vocals tend to be this way. Yeah, very impressive. Kind of reminds me of the Athera lineup vocals. The sound here is beautiful. I do notice if I play faster, I would expect it to bring in a different sample, like a different connecting line there. Let's try the standard legato type. You can turn that off, apparently. Yeah, on the standard you can hear the glide a lot more. Doesn't seem like you can't adjust that at all. Yep. So melismatic. So it sounds beautiful, realistic. The thing that I'm thinking is, if you want to, you know, not have the melismatic line there, you can change to standard. So that helps a lot because the melismatic sounds beautiful on the right, you know, the right phrase in the right place. But if it's all the time there, especially if you're moving fast, that's probably going to be not desirable, at least in the way that I would write. And then the legato comes in, and you can kind of hear that there's that glide comes in, which reduces the realism, and then also the transitions aren't as realistic as the melismatic here. And again, you could be working with a phrase where you only need the melismatic and it sounds perfect. But again, this is about, you know, flexibility and, you know, situational awareness. I would love to have controls. Let me again, just see that I'm not missing here. Control over the glide would be super nice. Just add more or less depending on the phrase and the moment. That would help with the realism here. But it is fantastically performed, first of all, and recorded and mixed. The sound itself is beautiful. The only questions are the consistency of the realism and the flexibility of using this. And it also only has this one vowel style, so something to consider as well. Let's do throat singing. Obviously, I'm playing in an exaggerated way. I just want to hear what it's technically doing there. So clearly lending itself to a slower style. I would love to have like a release control on this one as well, because I feel like it would like have a shorter, faster one would help a lot with the realism between, you know, moving between notes. Once again, the sound itself, super well done. The recording, the mixing, again. And, you know, once you put, let's say, put more reverb on this, helps you to glue this a lot more. Okay, so it gets a lot louder with the reverb. Okay, so I'm also completely blind. There is a legato option here. Let me pull down the reverb. So I see, so skipping the beginning of the sample, kind of gluing it together, not hyper realistic there. And I would say in certain situations, even not having that might be realistic sounding, because in the beginning of the sample, you get this slight sort of glide change. So I would, for example, that would be perfectly reasonable to me, in terms of like something someone could sing. Perfectly reasonable. Again, there gets a bit. You can clearly hear maybe some pitching there even. So you can definitely hear the steps there. You know, so it's moving the beginning of the sample and then doing a slight glue there. But yeah, I would probably use the non-legato version for most cases. Sounds more realistic to me due to how it's sampled, which is, you know, cleverly sampled in that regard. Bobby legato. Let's see what you got, Bobby. Beautiful voice. I like this. It's sort of, you know, clearly a male voice, but it's kind of softer. It has that kind of delicate aspect to it. That's a very, very nice tone. Kind of a airy but grounded tone, and you know, you hear that. What's the word? What's the word that I'm looking for? Vulnerability. I'd love to harmonize with this, but you can open 2 instances and go, obviously. So, okay, we have. Okay, I want to fix my mistake. Okay, no, yeah. So this one, Luiza didn't have vowels. This one didn't have, but Bobby has vowels. Good job, Bobby. Transitions between vowels are perfectly well done, very smooth, realistic, no issues there. Sometimes I'd say it's more common for there to be issues there, but this is very nicely done here. I love that there's an vowel. That's super. I love that sound. You can do so many beautiful things with that. It's just so intimate and, you know, vulnerable, but somehow powerful as well. So that's really good. Yeah, I love this voice. Plays really nicely. Also seems to handle some of the faster stuff a bit better. Okay, now we have something called voice sequence. Are they saying cocked? Okay, let's again adjust this window here to the appropriate size. Let's fit to screen, which can be sometimes hard depending on what industry you're in.
This soccer dog, soccer, this soccer coat, coat, knock, show, et, nus, knack, nus.
I have to say that some of these are rather entertaining in the Finnish language.
Nak, dus, ram, dus, nus, dus, nus, dus, nus, rek, su, rei, rei, do, ha, nus, rei, this, soccer, et, show, knock, out, do, knock, do, this, nus, dark, knock, dus, ram, rek, su.
So first of all, awesome stuff. I love this. Again, sampling, mixing, super well done. I have to say, a bit overwhelmed and disoriented just opening this up and looking at it. We have clearly these 4 banks, okay? And presumably they allocate to these different colors on the keyboard. There's nothing lighting up here on the screen when I play something, which is something that could be added. Because here I'm presuming I'm playing the blue zone, which is probably the first bank, and it says fizz. And they say fizz. So, cool. Okay, tua, and then okay, yeah. So, all right, I understand how that goes in there. Because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, it does say sequence, so I'm immediately thinking about sequencing here. It does have a loop mode, so probably that somehow does work like that. Speed, Randomized voices. It's a bit, this all is clear enough, fair enough, but how it sequences. Okay, there we go. So the red key, so let's just play that. Okay, so simple enough, kind of like once you do that, you realize what it does. So each of these steps are marked with a note length, 16th, 8th, triplet, 8th, quarter, triplet, quarter, etc. Whole note. Okay, so that's simple enough. Kind of like, seems like very, what's the word that I'm looking for? Not like do it yourself, but kind of a very simple, straightforward, kind of brute force. That's not what I'm missing a word here. But yeah, very, very, once you do that, you realize what it does. This is actually pretty nice, relatively fast, clear. Everything kind of reminds me of the synthesizer by Dombra. Is it the 4, something 4? But like every knob that exists and function that exists there is on the interface. And this kind of reminds me of that, which is cool. So actually pretty fast way of sequencing these into something you like. Cool. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's move on to the female rage screaming. So this is very of the times, clearly. Very we all know the sound of this. Let's just say that. It's just like in real life. Okay, let me pull back a bit on the level here. Immediately, I'm not super keen on the reverb for this. Through, but yeah, a lot better. I would pair that with a different reverb. It's just sort of doesn't pair super well in my ears. So first of all, it's really cool to have female voices for this, because they can be difficult to source. So that is a huge plus. We have this red zone here. Which is just pitch, so okay, cool. I would probably not be, unless I was doing something like unorthodox or specific stylistically, I wouldn't be pitching for realism, but so the diversity of these shouts and these they seem to be kind of in a pretty closely pooled camp. So I would like a bit more different sort of stuff there. The stereo spread is pretty bigger than I would go for. You definitely have like the same signal sort of sent into different places to make it seem like that. The effect itself is good, but you know, if you want to do a slightly different soundstage for that, then that's obviously gonna require you to adjust the stereo thing there. But yeah, good to have in the toolkit. Again, I would sort of want maybe a bit more diversity there in terms of what they are screaming. Cool. I think that wraps up voices. Let's go into drones next. So we've got layered drones and drones. Let's do layered. I think that's pretty much what we can what we can manage here today in this video. Cool. Start playing. Yeah, pretty much what I expected. Super solid, just really, really good sound design and mixing in that realm. Not much more to say about that. So obviously this is combining layers, as it says, effects, percussion, tonal. Cool. And doesn't seem you can dig in there. It has a playable mode. Yeah, so it pitches the... Yeah, it pitches the one you last played, apparently. You can't go in here and change it, which would, you know, go in tonal, percussion, or effects to change sounds, which seems like a missed opportunity. Yeah, it doesn't seem to let you do that. But yeah, if you go into layers, then you can, I would presume, individually jump into those. But, okay, so presumably, okay, no. This doesn't seem like there's enough stuff here. Red zone pitches. Okay, so it doesn't seem like you can go in here and select what you're doing. So it seems like drones, it's on its own, is just like more like tonal drone stuff. And then in the layer drones, you just have to mute or solo stuff that you want to use on its own. Seems like that's how it's laid out. I would love for it to not be that way. So I could actually open up all of these layers in just a drone thing. But I mean, I get this approach as well. But organic synths. Okay, so a lot of stuff in here. Not particularly helpfully named, because it's just organic playable synth and then numbers. You got some mod wheel detune, mod wheel dynamic. We'll do a couple from here, just so that we can see some of them. It's actually super nice. This is like, sounds like a woodwind sample thingy, but really nicely put together. It's actually, this could even, in certain types of sounds and situations, will sound like a very realistic woodwind arrangement. So that's really nicely done. I like that. Let's do 7. Obviously very detuned, so doing harmony is not possible. Yeah, so you're probably going to have to work that as individual notes there. Let's do a few more. Again, beautiful sound. They do this really well. They take these samples, put them in this engine, make them sound pretty, and they play nicely. They're just contextually consistent with their sound. Not a whole you can do in terms of tweakability here, so they tend to be like these packages that you get. Like for example, with this, you can hear some of that, like a granular type of effect going there, but unless that's the delay, no, it's not. So kind of stuck with whatever they do. But that being said, these are really, really well done. So in most cases, you probably wouldn't want to dig. I mean, if I was using this, I would be kind of inspired to write a piece based on that sound. So not a huge issue, but, you know, limited in the tweakability. Again there, beautiful sound, really nicely put together with those effects and everything. Let me do... Oh, don't want to do that. Let's do one more. Beautiful sound, and you know, looking at the visuals of the library as well, it does that kind of like dark ambient thing really well. One more, let's do 19, and that's going to be the last of the synths. Cool. Yeah, these are super nicely done. More tweakability would be great, but you know, they decided to take that approach. Loops and pulses. Let's try a few of these just to get an idea of what they do. Okay, so every blue key gives you a sample, and then you do have the red zone to give you the pitch. Pitching works fine. Again, do better timing than I just did and you'll be okay. Again, especially with these where you have breaks, it's easier to make that realistic. If it's a faster thing, you really need to time your pitch changes very accurately to make it as real as possible. I really like this. Gives you a bunch of... This is quite a good set of samples, first of all, to have. But you get... You know, you might have sections in your song that need something different. This gives you obviously super realistic stuff because it's a recorded sample. And also sometimes these can just inspire an entire track. So they're definitely worth exploring and testing out. That is a good inclusion because it does make this a lot more versatile. Let's do a couple of cellos here. Let's do them with less volume. Again, like if you want to go for that synthetic sound, these kind of engines can be fantastic for that kind of stuff. You really want to capture like a loopy synthetic pitched sound, and in this sort of a interface, it's super fast to work and actually very, very inspiring as well. You can also play with the timing of the pitch change, continue the sample, the loop itself, but yeah. Now that's really cool. I also like this for the cellos because it does give, you know, that added option of realism there. Let's, I want to do the marching loops. So yeah, they're like percussive, marching-ish things. Definitely going for that harder hitting sound for sure. And that tends to be, you know, the trend we picked up from quite a few of these different sounds. I want to hear the didgeridoo. that works super nicely. Glues very nicely to the pitch changes. It can actually be a pretty cool instrument. Let's do breath loops. So again, here the reverb gets a bit airy to my taste. These are, again, I always praise these because they can be great percussive elements, but in the vocal realm, sometimes exactly what you need. Cool. That really extends, again, a lot of, you know, the range of the female vocal elements that are here. Low pulses. I want to hear what these sound like. These are really cool. Super cinematic, super ready to go. They have a beautiful, how they're mixed in very energetic, focused, polished way. Super, super solid. Being this good, I would want to see a bit more than 2 octaves of these samples. These are super, super solid. Very, very well done. So yeah, greedy me, I'd want to see more of that. Let's do sounds and effects. This is the last section here. Kangling. Whatever that is. Oh, it's this. I love this. I was actually hoping to get more of these from somewhere, so this is fantastic. Good to know what it is actually as well. Beautiful. Air and human whooshes. Yeah, I mean those sound really, really good. Let's try and get this opened. Yeah, loving this as an addition. You can never really have too many like transitional effects. In my experience, still, I'd say a very undertapped market in the sample library world. You know, risers, transitional effects, whooshes, hits, stuff like that. Still, not a ton of diversity. So this is really cool. And again, same productional quality here. Really, really well put together here and mixed. Let's do... Okay, so we got a lot more, you know, whooshes, subs, short hits, risers, impact, hits. Let's do low impact and booms, and we'll call it there. Yeah, super, super solid. Okay, I think we're going to call it there because otherwise this is an absurdly long demo, but it is a sizable library. So let's wrap this up. Let me open the side panel so I can actually remember everything that's in here, so I can try and wrap it up. Let's also make this such a size that you can see my pretty face, and then I can go through this simultaneously. Cool. Playable instruments. In terms of realism, I wouldn't put this in the camp of hyper realistic. These tend to sound to me to be like very contextual tools, so they do really well in an action like a full production with other instruments. In that context, putting these things together in the right place, obviously presuming that you know how to write decent music, they will sound perfectly fine. But in a kind of spotlight, to pass them as hyper realistic in places, you would have to do very conscious decisions of how you actually, play with them, etc., and probably a bit of automation and programming, etc. But yeah, I mean, in that context, they do really well. The Tagelharpa was probably my favorite out of those. Again, you can never have too much of that, and he plays the best out of those. Palm muted guitars, great. Some of the when it came to the solo cello, yeah, it depends on where you're playing and in what way, but with longer releases, sounds better. I really did love the orchestra sound, the orchestra cellos and violins. The core sound of it is stunning, and with those, let's actually open that up here just to kind of remember what we did. And I think it was especially this sul ponticello. But yeah, core sound of it, very nice. Dombra was on the more aggressive edge, but like a nice addition for like rhythmic string stuff. Percussion, these were again super well sampled and mixed. Very they hit super nicely and sit in the mix very nicely. Again, don't go to very quiet subtle velocities, and I was kind of like surprised by that, because if I was doing like a Groth library, I would expect it to go also to those quieter velocities. If you think about something like Vardruna or kind of a darker folk thing, they utilize a lot of those quieter velocities. So Groth is more on that harder hitting edge, and the percussion is that way as well. Sounds and effects, we very briefly touched on these, but a very comprehensive selection of things here. This is probably one of the best things for me personally that I will benefit from this, because pretty much every single impact, hit, whoosh, transition we tried here is just prime stuff, really well mixed, super polished, cinematic, ready to go. So this will probably be the number one thing of this library for me specifically, but these are really super well done, and you get quite a comprehensive selection of them here. And also the Kangling beautiful horn folk instrument, I love that. So that's super solid. Loops and pulses kind of obviously gives you again the Tagelharpa cello, but we have some new stuff, didgeridoo marching loops, which are kind of like stomping percussive effect things. This like gives you more flexibility. You can do, obviously being loops, they're hyper realistic because they're actual recordings. So you can use these as sources of inspiration, or to work in a part where the playable stuff doesn't do what you want it to do. So that widely expands the scope and the usability of this library. So that's a super good addition. I love the low pulses. Very, very, very nice, and definitely going to be using those. Voices, I was actually very impressed by these. I was impressed and surprised by the level of realism by these. In terms of the core sound of it, just perfect, beautiful sound, beautiful voices, again, beautifully mixed. With the, for example, with this Luiza Legato, with the standard, you can hear the some of the gliding happening there with the melismatic, beautiful realism, but it doesn't always serve you in the part that you want to be writing. For the throat singing, again, sounds brilliant. Kind of the same thing. The transitions, when you actually move from place to place, you got to make sure you do things in finer detail so you get the level of realism that is acceptable to you. The Bobby Legato is a beautiful sound, beautiful voice. And again, this was, definitely the most realistic out of them. And it had different types of, singing types or vowel types. So that was a fantastic add-on. The sequencer stuff, really good for those kind of like rhythmic, growly types of things. Organic synths, I was super impressed by these. They are really, really, really well done. They have this very cinematic sound, very consciously, very, what's the word that I'm looking for here? I can't quite pick it up. They beautifully take these source samples, which are sound like woodwinds and other realistic organic stuff, and I don't know what they process, how they do it, because you don't get to put your hands on the effects, which is the biggest downside to these. You can't tweak those effects that are in there, so that's a big negative. But that being said, they are super creatively done, very balanced, very musical. So I wouldn't be surprised if I picked up one of these and wrote an entire track based on the inspiration from one of these sounds. But yeah, really well done. The only negative would be that I'd want to have more control over the effects if that was possible. And they are indeed like organic sounding synths, but yeah, these sound super great. More of them would be also cool, because in the context of what they are, 19 isn't a ton, but it's a nice addition. But being as good as they are, I would want more. Drones, again, beautiful, cinematic, sounds really well done. Same kind of thing as in Secunda, I don't know how to pronounce that, but yeah, super cinematic, very well mixed, great stuff. In terms of the flexibility here, loading the samples you want into each slot, doesn't seem like you can do that. So you just have to go with what's here and then solo and mute to get what you want. But they do sound great, and it's simple enough to solo and mute stuff to use what you want. Again, more flexibility would be great, but in terms of what is there and what it sounds like, sounds great. Cool. That is it for this demo. It's a long one, but pretty sizable library. I do very much view this like they call it a toolkit, and I would very much agree with that. Very much like a toolkit type of library. But that being said, like I said, some of the things that are in here, like the drones and the synths and the pulses and the cinematic risers and hits and stuff, can be at the front and center of what you're doing. So it doesn't mean that this always takes the backseat by any means, but there's just so much flexibility and stuff in here that makes me call it a toolkit type of a library. But yeah, I like these approaches where they have like a vision. There's a sound, there's a style for a certain thing that they want to do. Like, let's do this dark folk library, and just have a bunch of tools within that pool, that statement of the style that they want to go for. So that's always a very welcome approach in my book. But let me know what you think if you have this at home or at your studio, and also let me know what you think about this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Finished.